Ladies and gentlemen, denizens of the internet, once again, your one-stop shop, that scum and villainy hive. This is the Deplorable Batcave podcast. I'm your host, Spartacus Ryuo, and joining us tonight, we have our usual panelists plus one. Our plus one is Jeff from World Class Bullshitters. Please greet our three people that watch.
Hello, three people that watch the Batcave. My name is Jeff Hicks. I host the World Class Bullshitters YouTube page / podcast and all that other crap, and I've been invited to be on the Batcave tonight, and I'm honored.
Glad to have you here. From my left to my right, the remaining podcasters, Beggar Hero.
Oh, geez, I'm first in line. This is really shocking.
Liberty Block.
Dewey, take the professor in the back and plug him into the hyperdrive.
Seawall.
They use warp drives in Star Wars, right?
And Gimpy, once again, inhabits our chat. He's like a fucking phantom. We can't exorcise him.
A menace, you might say.
Yes.
I would go more with he is our Sven computer, but that's just me.
I said I didn't pronounce it right, Gimp, so okay. So, gentlemen, today we're talking Star Wars merchandise. We cannot leave the Star Wars series alone. It's made too much of a cultural impact. So today we're discussing the other side of it from the movies. We're talking about the physical items. So, with that out there, I'm just going to completely open the floor, because I don't have much to offer on this one, I'm afraid.
Well, the toys used to be great, and now they're kind of shitty.
See, well, remind us of that last action figure you got.
You mean the one I never got ever?
You mean the only one you want to get your hands on, which is, of course, the Rose Tico action figure.
Oh, hell no. I may be the one guy in this chat room that is fucking yellow fever, but I'm not even going to tap that.
You know, one day they'll be known as firelighters.
I mean, considering that... I'm pretty sure those are stacked up in bargain bins at this point.
Jeff, what you have to do is you have to buy every single one that was ever manufactured and destroy it. Wipe it from existence.
No, you gotta pull an Atari ET with it. You gotta bury it in a landfill somewhere.
No, they will escape.
I'm pretty sure I got a fine from the EPA, but you want Ethan Van Sciver to buy them all up, because he's got that super chat money to bankroll every Rose Tico figure ever. I have a few Rose Ticos that I got for $1 as a joke, but if you watch any of our videos, you can see I find like 4 feet tall stacks of Rose Tico figures in my grocery stores. I go to the Disney store, they got tons and tons of them. It's just the worst Star Wars action figure ever produced. It's lame. Even if you take the character out of it being a complete crappy character in the movie, the toy is this little woman in a yellow jumpsuit with a giant rifle. She's not even cool. She doesn't have a robotic arm or anything.
So basically a Teletubby
Her
action
sister, who didn't have a speaking line, was a cooler character.
True. Very true.
Let's get the most important question. Does Captain Phasma toy not make that much of an impact?
Well,
she's the Kmart Boba Fett. Let's all be honest here.
Well, the thing is, I follow a lot of people online, and all they do is bitch about, oh, she doesn't have chrome armor. The toy's not chrome. Like, I don't ever hear anybody say about how great it is to have one. It's just they bitch about the paint job. So I've never heard a good discussion on Captain Phasma.
Yeah.
So it usually ends up being, what, gray then?
Yeah, I don't like the character. I don't know any of the people.
So they couldn't...
Force Awakens.
I know for a fact, because I've had action figures and toys in the past, at least had a silvery paint job.
Yeah. They usually have like vac metallicized shit like the old C-3PO. I mean, at least it looks metallic.
Wow, they went super cheap then.
Well, it happened a couple years ago. They went from about, I don't know, when did the episode 1 re-release happen? Remember when it went 3D for the Phantom Menace? Was that like, what, 2011, 12, 13, somewhere in there? Whenever that happened, they put like a whole glut of toys out for that movie, and they just sat on store shelves for like 2 years, and then they lost a whole bunch of money. So then they like lowered the quality of the figures and kept the same price point for a while, and that's how we got to where we are now.
I completely forgot that episode 1 got re-released.
Yeah.
In 3D.
Was there any marketing for that? 'Cause I don't remember it.
Well, there was. It just flew over everyone's head because nobody gave a shit.
If I remember right, the late 2000s, the early 10s was kind of the 3D craze at its upswing. And I don't know why they didn't do it with, Revenge of the Sith. That one had better scenes to 3D in it, to be completely honest. Even Attack of the Clones.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but at that around about that time, weren't they releasing Blu-rays for the classic trilogy, and somehow they find even more hidden footage that was never used before?
Yeah, first off, I am guilty. I saw episode 1, the re-release, hoping that if enough people saw it, we'd eventually get to episode 4. And this had to be early 2012 because Disney didn't own it yet. It was before Disney owned it, because there was even a trailer that said they were all coming eventually. But the Blu-ray had come out like the previous September, so September of 2011, and they found more ways to alter the movies and mess them up even more. But I will say this on record, I'm not an OT purist. There are some special edition changes I'm fine with.
Like cleaning
Jabba the
up
Hutt not being one of them.
Like cleaning up some of the special effects, things like that.
Yeah, there are. I mean, the first Star Wars is my favorite Star Wars movie and my second favorite movie overall. For as much as I love it, there are some shots at the Battle of Yavin that do not work. I don't care whose childhood is offended or whatever or ruined by that, but there are just some shots, like when they're flying over the Death Star fighting, it looks like two people are just taking the ships and turning them slightly and putting really great sound effects behind it. The special edition fixed and cut out a lot of the crap.
I'll actually agree with that. The action scene reshoots did look better in the special editions. I'll admit that.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, is that I think that literally flew over my head as a kid, because it's sort of the quality of the time. And when it was initially filmed, it was so revolutionary.
Well, yeah. Also, Star Wars pioneered the space opera. But ILM was essentially pioneering this sort of filming technique. Mm-hmm. And don't forget that when Lucas was originally trying to market the film, he was literally using World War II footage.
Yeah, for the animatics that he would cut together and then give to the ILM crew, yeah.
And the only one who had the vision to go along with that was Steven Spielberg.
Well, good.
Wasn't the inspiration for the Trench Run the movie The Dam Busters, which was based on a real event from World War II?
Kind of, except it wasn't the Death Star.
I know, but the concept of the Trench Run. Oh, hey, Bigfoot.
Hey, Bigfoot.
I got home finally.
Oh, glad you can make it.
Yeah, I guess so. And the whole concept of the aerial, well, the space combat was based on aerial combat.
Yeah.
In terms of your point about not being an OT purist, yeah, even I will admit there are some tweaks here and there that did add a lot to the universe. Very, very small tweaks, like what they did with Mos Eisley, making it more of
alive. Made it more alive.
Yeah, as opposed to a few bits of junk they found in the desert.
Yeah.
In Tunisia.
And though the Jabba scene, they really, when they did the re-release, they really pushed the technology well beyond the limits. Oh. It did help fill in some of the story.
You think so? I think the Jabba scene is the most redundant part of the movie, because Greedo scenes told you exactly what you needed to know.
Yeah.
And then you get to, 2 minutes later, there's Jabba the Hutt, and he reiterates the exact same thing, and then it's like, okay, I get it. And then there's Boba Fett. Yeah. Because you want to sell a Boba Fett figure to kids that are watching them in order. It's like, okay, whatever. I was a kid. I was like 8 years old when that happened, and I thought that was kind of weird. But for me, I would just want the first half of the original cut, and then really just the Death Star battle is what I want fixed. I don't care about, I do like some of the dialogue changes, too, because here's one thing that no one thinks about when they talk about original Star Wars. Do they mean the 70mm print? Or the other one that had whatever, how do they determine what was the original? Because the 70mm prints of Star Wars and Jedi have different things in them. So therefore, those came out first in some places, making them the original. Just because someone remembers it a certain way doesn't make it the original. So there's always that weird gray area when you have these people that are reconstructing these fan edits and all this stuff that they're doing. Like, they're not really getting the purest form because there's never always been the purest form of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. Though I think a fair benchmark is before the special editions.
Well, I mean,
that's specifically when Lucas went back to refilm it the way he wanted it, the way he originally envisaged it.
Oh no, I get all that, but I'm saying, like, for example, there's a line of dialogue on the Death Star where C-3PO explains about the reactor is coupled, or not the reactor, but how Obi-Wan Kenobi can shut down the tractor beam. If you watch a certain cut of the original 77 version, there's dialogue. If you watch other 70mm prints, or it's a 70mm prints that has dialogue, the 35 doesn't. So it's like, are we just going by what people saw on videotape? There's just so many things that are changed from, like, the get-go of Star Wars. Like, there's other scenes in Empire that are different. So it's just a weird gray area. I'm not saying I advocate for changing the story, but there is a happy medium to be found somewhere.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think there is one scene, however, in the special editions that we can all agree on was completely unnecessary.
Do not remind me of that fucking dance scene.
Turning Jabba's palace into a musical.
It was dumb. Do you guys like Lopty Neck, the original one?
I think
they're both kind of dumb.
Yeah, oh yeah, they're both dumb, but at least, the other one was played down as just being there.
And it's a much better song, too.
Yes.
It's kind of funky.
Yeah, I'm young enough where I've never even seen the original cut.
Oh, you poor thing.
So,
I do think that a lot of it was a test bed to work on the CG technology that was going to be used for the upcoming Phantom Menace, though no one really knew what it was going to be at the time. And I certainly remember at the time, post 97, the hype for what was going to be the next Star Wars film was utterly palpable. It was so. You could slice through that with a knife. And I don't know about you, Jeff, or how old you were at the time, but the mania that was spreading of just how we were going to get Star Wars for the first time at that time, 16 years, was so captivating.
Oh, I remember. I was 10 years old, so I was young, but I wasn't too young because I'm 29 now. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, Star Wars, there's going to be a new one. And I'd only been into Star Wars for about 3 or 4 years at that point, so I didn't really grow up with Star Wars the way most people did. Funny story, though, my mom dated a guy in the 70s and 80s who worked at Kenner on the toy line, so she got to see this stuff before anybody did, and she didn't even like Star Wars. So then I came along, years later, and was into it big time. And for a while, she just couldn't accept it. She's like, I hate Star Wars. How do you like this stuff? And I just kind of found it on my own. And she bought me all the toys and everything I ever wanted, but she could not stand watching those movies. And it was my grandma that took me to see Episode 1 in theaters. And I saw it and I hated it. And I got out of Star Wars for a couple of years because I hated that movie with a passion. At 10 years old, I thought it was stupid. The lightsaber duel was cool. I didn't like Jar Jar. I played the pod racing game. And I just moved into other stuff after that because that was such a letdown for me.
Wow. You're the only person of that particular age who I've ever heard say that.
Yeah, and then I tried to give it another chance with Episode 2, and I didn't like that one either. So what I did is I stayed away from Star Wars until 2004 with the DVD coming out for the original trilogy. And they started releasing, the new toy line based on the original characters, and I kind of got into the hype. And I remember one of the first things I ever bought off Amazon was the Star Wars DVD collection. And then I stuck through it, and I liked Revenge of the Sith. I saw it on 2 different continents. And then I've been a fan pretty much consistently, and I've gone back and loved the old ones even more throughout the years. So my little journey with Star Wars.
I was having a discussion with someone else in the Batcave about this. Do you find that Episode 1 in of itself has improved over the years?
Yes,
If you look at
100%.
it as a self-contained story.
It's weird. When I walked out of Episode 7, the first thing I said to some guys, I like the prequels all of a sudden. Because I
Oh no!
Yes,
Stop proving Razor right. Stop it!
That was seriously. There's this guy that I know. I don't know if any of you guys are into comic books or anything like that, but I used to work conventions as an artist, and then one year I worked for an artist named Neil Adams. He was like a real famous artist. He created like Ra's al Ghul and stuff like that from the Dark Knight movies.
Oh, damn.
So he's like a big Batman artist, one of the all-time greats. I worked with this other guy that was there at the booth, and the other guy's like in his early 40s, and he's got kids and stuff. And I see him at the theater, nicest guy ever. And like we walk out of the theater, and he's got a smile on his face, and I'm just shocked with how terrible Episode 7 was. And he looked at me, and he's like, "What'd you think?" I'm like, "I like the prequels." And through the last couple of years, I've actually appreciated Episode 1 much more than the other two. Not because it's the best one in terms of like story, but there's so much of that old Star Wars feel that carried over. It's a lot like Indiana Jones. When you watch Raiders of the Lost Ark is trying to be a throwback to old serials. And by the time you get to Temple of Doom and Last Crusade, Indiana Jones has found its own identity. With the Star Wars prequels, Episode 1 comes out, and it's trying to be its own thing while still trying to capture the spirit of the originals. And once you get to Episodes 2 and 3, they're their own thing. That's why I kind of enjoy Episode 1 now, because I'm not saying it feels just like the original trilogy, but there are certain elements that are a callback, and I go, oh, okay, I get it.
Basically, hindsight kicked in.
Yeah,
well,
plus
it would have that luxury because it was the first Star Wars in 16 years, and it was setting the scene for what had been hallowed ground for so long. So it had that freedom to be the trendsetter in a way.
Plus, it didn't have the luxury of the overabundance of CGI sets. Because for as much as I can say Episode 3 is a solid movie, there are scenes that have these weird digital zooms that make that movie look terrible by comparison. That, to me, for as much as I enjoy a lot of it, it's one of the hardest to watch in terms of like the cinematography. It's just
Also,
weird look.
without the original trilogy, we wouldn't have gotten the Clone Wars series. That was
I like the Clone Wars.
It was a good series that I would argue treated its audience a bit more maturely than the movies did, and had better character development.
I'll go on record and say it's the best piece of Star Wars media since the original movies came out. And never have I been like so engaged. It made me like Anakin. I actually thought about Hayden Christensen. Like maybe he's not that bad. And I watched the movies again. Yes.
Well, the thing is, they also played him right in the show, which is a extremely naturally talented and gifted individual who has anger just beneath the surface, who's willing to dip into it to push himself even harder, and it's corrupting him slowly. Whereas with the series, it's like he's a whiny, prissy little bitch, and then Kylo Ren comes along, and we're like, I like Hayden Christensen now.
Well, actually, speaking of, ironically enough, and I am on record in our, ironically enough, if you wanted to go back and check this out, Jeff, we actually have a Star Wars holiday special that we did in December, right after Episode 8 came out. I'm on record there as saying, after watching Episode 7, I immediately said, I knew what I miss. I hate sand.
But
It's coarse and it gets everywhere.
I mean, see, the instant I got to the end of Episode 7, I was like, I hate sand. My God, this is where I am now.
I'll say one thing about Episode 7. Episode 8. Episode 7, okay, the way I've described the new trilogy, the new sequel trilogy, it's getting confusing what to call them now, the sequel trilogy. They are flawed clones of the original trilogy. Like, do you remember, I think it was clone number 99 from the Clone Wars? That's what these movies are. They're technically a clone trooper, but they fucked up the process. Horribly.
Was that the one that got the hero's death after he didn't get the fight or something? Like he was
when Kamino was under attack.
That was a good episode.
Yeah, very sad.
Sewell, I've got a question with that. How is it that you have a trilogy that is so emphatic about getting rid of old canon? No, this is how we're going to do things now. We're going to make new stories. Yet it is entirely dependent on the classic trilogy. So much so that it has to ape it. Plot point for plot point.
Though it might move things around a little bit, but it's still in the same movies. Like, for example, in Episode 8, they moved the Battle of Hoth from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. That's all they did. That is the only difference.
Yep.
Pretty much.
How do you feel about practical effects? Because I think that's another reason why I like the OG trilogy so much. I'm just a fan of practical effects in general.
Practical effects are cool, but the problem is, a lot of stunt guys will say they're a lot more trouble than they're worth. Especially when you get into spectacle.
Actually, interestingly enough, say what you will about them, I actually still occasionally watch stuff from Channel Awesome. And they actually, the video I watched recently actually had this interesting debate. Here's the difference between practical effects and CGI. With practical effects, you know that they're already there. You just have to convince yourself that they're real and interacting with the environment. You have only one filter to go through in order to sink yourself in the story. With CGI, you have to go through two. You have to be convinced that it's real and interacting with the environment, and that it's there.
Well, I like practical effects and CGI, but with the new Star Wars movies, they keep hiding behind the fact that they use practical effects. Like, practical effects are a marketing ploy by Disney to be like, hey, remember the original Star Wars? Remember how great they were? Well, these are made just like them. It's never been about the story or the unique nature or the characters or anything like that. It's literally, hey, guys, we're in the sand. This droid's really there. We're using a remote control. This thing's there. Look at the speeder on a cable, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's all they did to market the nostalgia really fast. And then Ryan Johnson's ass is like, hey, we have to have this real space thing, the space cow shooting out milk, and this fox, and this and that. And it's like, there's a reason these movies are dog shit, because they're focused on the practical effects is a selling point. I like practical effects. I think they abandoned them way too early in the mid-90s because we were just getting to a point where, like Jurassic Park, you had animatronics, you had puppetry, you had CGI.
You had the hybrid. You had the hybrid era.
It's 25 years old and still looks great.
Yeah.
Spider-Man, as much as I love Spider-Man, there are shots that look like absolute shit. And it's almost 10 years later, 9 years later. They just abandoned practical effects too early.
Yeah, that's because the CGI tends to date terribly. I mean, just look at Yoda. Yoda looks like a fucking bogey, or booger, as you guys would say, in episode 1. I do think you've raised an interesting point, though, because if you think about the classic trilogy, especially Star Wars itself, episode 4, you had all these practical effects and the mobilization of them in order to be able to tell the story. It was so difficult to translate onto the screen that you had to have these novel techniques in order to be able to convey whatever the message was. Space battles, etc., which hadn't really been done before. Whereas now it's completely the wrong focus. It's all, look at the shiny, look at the lighting effects.
It's the Apple marketing strategy. Don't look at the hardware underneath or lack thereof. Look at the shiny logo on the outside of it. Look at what we can make it do with the demo version that can only do this one thing.
As far as the practical effects go in the original, I think part of the charm was that a lot of the costumes and like droids were all just stuff they kind of cobbled together and kind of made it look like it.
Yeah,
the used universe.
Yeah,
that hadn't been done before.
It looked dirty. It looked grungy. It looked lived in.
What was the Millennium Falcon?
The new movies are
a handover in space.
The new movies are still way too shiny. Sorry.
Well, you bring up a good point about the cobbled together universe and stuff. The thing is, with those ships, they actually look like they're there. I mean, they are models, and the way they're manipulated, especially when you get the Empire Strikes Back. Like, look at the way the Falcon flies through the asteroid field and onto that big asteroid and stuff. That's one model with camera tricks, and that looks more realistic than anything you get from Episode 8 that came out 38 years later. Because that's real lighting, that's real this. It's all kinds of things that come together to make it's really there. It's just manipulated to, move in a certain way. I think the best bet for them, like they did in Rogue One, is they made the ships, the models, or the CGI look like the actual model work and not try to do different type of lighting and this and that. And I think that helps a little more to create that Star Wars look. I mean, there's a reason these movies have stood the test of time.
Of all of the Disney movies that they've made so far, I would say Rogue One is the best, by far.
I agree 100%. I bought that one on Blu-ray unironically.
I know people have this hard-on for, they already had the story about how the Death Star plans were gotten by, what's his name, Kyle Katarn. Here's the problem. Kyle Katarn's kind of a bit of a Mary Sue if you actually look at his stories.
Yeah, I think...
Sorry,
I think one of the features about...
Be glad I sit in here. Holy shit, he would murder you.
Yeah, Rogue One.
Yeah.
I can forgive some of the aspects of it. Because it didn't really matter what happened because, spoiler, everybody fucking dies. But the feel, the visual style of the movie, how it's shot, how it's conveyed, it at least feels like the classic trilogy.
Yeah.
Not just because they're using Imperial class Star Destroyers and bits and pieces here and there, but just there's a certain faithfulness in the visual style there that I do appreciate.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much effort was placed into that, or if it was,
or was it
I don't think it was too incidental. I do think that they're not.
Also, one thing I really liked is they also shattered the fan perception that the Rebel Alliance is this ultimate good and the Empire is the ultimate evil. Because, I mean, the beginning of the movie kind of starts out with the guy straight up fucking murdering a guy who risked his life to get him information.
Oh, episode 9 pointed that out through and through.
Episode 8.
Oh, sorry, episode 8, yeah.
But they did it heavy-handed, the other one did it subtly.
As much as fun as the discussion has been, we were going to be talking about the merchandise other than the movies themselves.
Yeah.
Well, it's up to you guys. I got plenty of time, so we can do whatever you need to do.
What do you guys want to do? Do you want to keep talking about the movies in general, or do you want to stick with the original topic?
Can I make a suggestion? If we're going to tackle the merchandise, should we start off by pointing out what everyone's favorite set of Star Wars merchandise was, whether you owned it or whether you wanted to own it?
I think I've only ever bought...
And what you would like.
I think I only personally ever bought, like, a single set of, like, prequel era Lego toys of Star Wars merchandise.
I'm much the same. I played with some Legos that were Star Wars related, but that was about it. It was just not my generation kind of thing. I mean, like all kids during the... Because I was born in late 92, so I was kind of growing up with the prequel trilogy. So I did have, lightsabers to play with as a kid, but that was about it. If I had to say something I would like, I wouldn't mind... I know this is technically a little outside the merchandise, but it's the close I would say. I wouldn't mind, doing like a custom lightsaber hilt at some point. That'd be cool to do.
Those are cool to look at.
Yeah. Well, I'd go lightsaber tone fub, just to be a little bit different.
Actually, wasn't it a little before Episode 7 came out where they actually released one where you can make a customized lightsaber?
There are companies that do them, but...
Blade builders.
Please don't talk about blade builders around me. I've seen probably 500 blade builders in the last few months. Toys R Us can't get rid of them. Like I went to a Toys R Us 2 days ago that was going out of business, and they still had them.
Yeah.
Coming soon, the Rose Tico edition of the blade builder.
I'm one of those guys who would just go to like a machinist to have it done. Get buddy with machinist and cover material costs and work with him. That's what I would do. Proper, authentic model making.
But yeah, I'd probably rather just talk about the movie still. Sorry for interrupting. But
there's Ultra Sabers you could check out that they do that kind of stuff, like handcrafted metal hilts, motion sensors, special lighting, the way it turns on and off. Like, those are probably the best you can get right now. They're like $500, but if you're willing to spend the money, you're going to get something as good as they would use on a set before they augment it with CGI.
Sorry, but my disposable income is currently tied into a completely different hobby at the moment.
Ooh, what's that?
Airsoft military simulation. Keep a long story short, yeah.
Actually, I've seen... Actually, was it around Episode 3 came out where they had like those... I mean, they're obviously not going to extend, but they were lit up. There were lightsabers that lit up and had sound effects, and if you could clash... Okay, it was like well, you could also clash them, and that would actually make sounds.
Yes, the Force FX lightsabers.
Okay. And then there were the Master Replica ones that were the high-end ones, and those were always better than the Force FX sabers, but I didn't have any.
I think I had one Force FX saber. I think it was like Obi-Wan's or something.
Yeah, the Darth Vader one glowed pink at night.
I'm sorry, the thing is, I kind of grew up kind of poor, so I ended up just having one of those cheap $5 ones flicking and extends.
Oh, the toilet roll ones.
Yeah, those.
Well, I grew up with a single parent who was like, hey, I'll buy you whatever you want. My mom's cool about stuff. In terms of Star Wars merchandise, if it came out in the 90s and I wanted it, I had it. Like, if you go back and look at the first Power of the Force 2 wave, on the back of the cards, I'm like, I got everything on there. X-Wing, TIE Fighter, Millennium Falcon, Land Speeder, AT-AT Walker. Didn't have an AT-ST or a Snowspeeder because I didn't really want it, but my Star Wars collection as a kid was like crazy. I could reenact most of the movies, A-Wings, all that shit.
To put things into perspective, guys, I believe Jeff has the Area 51 of Star Wars merchandise.
Well, I haven't.
It's the last scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Star Wars toys.
Well, when you brought up like what's your favorite one, my friend in college bought me the Legacy Collection Big Millennium Falcon. It's like 2.5 feet long.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's really crazy because if you look at it now, it goes for like $500 to $1,000. When it first came out, it was $150, and I was working in college. I was 19 on a summer vacation, and I saw it was only $149. But that summer, I had to either pay for school and buy all the Indiana Jones merchandise because they had never made it in that big of a quantity. So I bought everything. But that Falcon was cool. My friend gave it to me as a gift, and if you want a cool original trilogy toy, I'd argue it's the best one ever. Like, take out even bring in the vintage stuff. That big Millennium Falcon is, the tip.
Do you know how that came about? That Millennium Falcon.
What, the big one?
Yeah.
Did the mold break, or did they want to do something? Okay.
Yes, the tooling broke for the old one. They're like, fuck it, let's just make it as best as we can.
Well, I went to the same college where that guy that designed all the Star Wars toys went, so he's like not mentioned in every course, but there are places that mention like, oh, Star Wars was, blah blah blah, designed in this building. So it's kind of cool. I've always been around the merchandise, even before I realized that I was a Star Wars fan, and I like that toy so much that it got me back into collecting a bunch of other crap in college. So only for
with Palitoy, man, fucking bastard.
I would love the Palitoy Death Star if I could go back and get a
chipboard
vintage.
Death Star.
What?
The chipboard Death Star.
Yeah, because it's probably as cool as the Kenner one. It's 2 floors. It has all that stuff. I've seen videos of it. I'd love to have one. I just don't have that kind of money right now.
Yep.
Well, I don't know if you ever got these back in the day, but probably my favorite series of all the Star Wars toys was the Action Fleet by Galoob.
Oh yeah.
I originally loved the Micro Machines. First of all, there were so many vehicles, and they were so faithful, even though they were on such a tiny scale. But then came the Action Fleet, which meant you could have figures that would fit inside the vehicles, but it was a manageable scale, which meant you could have much larger ships. And at the zenith of Galoob's capability and what they were doing with the Action Fleet, you had some incredibly rare ones that were only in the EU. They go for an absolute fortune now. But things like the TIE Defender, the E-Wing from Dark Empire, and
stuff that Darth Disney wiped from canon.
Gone, destroyed by the
they
Empire.
Which one was the one that Thrawn brought back in Rebels? Was it the TIE Defender or was it the TIE...
It was, oh god, they fucking murdered that. Why?
Because they couldn't use Thrawn as the new trilogy villain because then the good guys would lose and the bad guy would win until he was fucking betrayed.
We're going a bit of a tangent here. Have you actually seen Rebels yet, Jeff?
One episode, and I didn't like it, so I turned it off.
Okay. Did you watch it from the beginning?
The episode I saw aired years ago, probably like in 2014. So I don't know how long ago that was into the run.
Yeah, that was probably the first season, because it did start off a bit sort of kiddie, and as it progressed, it got a little bit.
It's not Star Wars: The Clone Wars, but it's better than a lot of the.
It's the best. I will say this: it's the best Disney that there is available.
If they were to put that on a Hulu or a streaming service that I already own, I would watch it. I'm just not. I don't want to sound super militant, but I'm in a place right now where I don't want to give my money to Disney outside of like a few Japanese import collectibles. Like I'm really like against even giving them my time. So
I completely understand. That's why I was going to ask your opinion, because there are some Black Series action figures that look absolutely awesome.
Oh yeah.
You've got the Disney logo on the box.
Well, here's the thing about the Black Series in my collection. I own a few, about 10 or 15, but there's only a few that I've ever paid full price for because here around Christmas time, my local grocery chain, it's called Kroger, it's a big, big chain, they get toys in. They consider Star Wars toys Christmas merchandise. So, you know how like when you go to the store and they discount wrapping paper and ribbons and all that stuff?
Right.
They discount Star Wars stuff instantly. So if you wait 2 days after Christmas, it's 60%, 70% off. And
Nice.
Walmart recently, they were trying to clearance out all the episode 7, 8, and Rogue One shit, so they put it down to $5, and that rolled over into the Solo wave. So I picked up most of the Solo wave for $5 a figure. I mean, at those prices, I can't not pick them up because it's such a good deal. But I do not like to spend a lot of money on Disney merchandise. I kind of feel bad paying for tickets. I had to use an AMC Rewards Pass to get my Solo tickets just so I wouldn't have to like pay my own cash. And I bitched to the projectionist because the screen was too dark, so I got another free pass to go back. So,
So it didn't
I guess
cost you
Disney-
anything.
Didn't cost me anything, and it's helped me make a ton of videos.
Yeah.
But actually, interestingly enough, I play a Japanese card game. I don't think anybody here has really heard of it. It's called Weiss Shores. It's primarily based on anime and video games.
Mhm.
Over in Japan, they have the Star Wars set. Japan only, because over here we have a Star Wars card game.
Yep.
But I want to get it, but at the same time, the best deck involves Episode 7 shit.
Ugh.
Despite the best card in the set being Darth Vader.
Are you sure it's not Rey who can defeat everyone with just blinking her eye or some shit like that?
Angry face.
Apparently some kind of combo of Rey and the card of Luke's lightsaber, and it does stupid shit.
Spart, are you telling me Rey doesn't have Exodia abilities?
In Disney, she does.
Tell you one thing about Luke Skywalker now is that his lightsaber is the same color as the milk he's extracted.
And it's no longer in use. Got destroyed. Thank you.
Jeff, you are the expert on everything Star Wars toys. Did they make the blue milk cow toy?
No, that picture you guys see online is just a fan-made joke.
Okay, thank fucking Christ.
Like,
It doesn't
also,
exist.
there's no Vice Admiral Holdo figure out yet. Like, people say, get that to destroy it. That it's not out yet. So for everyone
you mean
that
Vice
seems to be
Admiral
linked,
Tumblr?
yeah, Tumblr. I call her Vice Admiral Gender Studies. I think Sargon of Akkad or somebody called her that.
I think almost
Meryl
everybody
Streep.
did.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, that character alone has done so much damage to the Star Wars brand. Here's one thing I think Disney and all these people in power forget. Kids don't buy into the garbage that they're selling. It's really easy to sell to kids, but you got to do it on like a primal level. They're trying to sell these kids Star Wars merchandise, yet the heroes they're trying to market to them aren't heroes. They're not cool. They don't achieve anything. They get talked down to by some ugly space witch. That's a big reason why their brand fails the way it does nowadays, because they don't allow boys to be boys, girls to be girls, and just sell traditional stuff. They got to always make it something else.
And to step into politics for just a second, the media is really trying to ignore the fact, but Generation Z, it's kind of earned the nickname Generation Zyklon. It's a little scary, to be completely honest, being at the tail end of millennials, looking at Generation Z going, huh, I didn't realize you could get more conservative than the greatest generation. Did not realize that was possible.
No,
But-
it's a backlash to the
Exactly.
the Zyklon.
Well, the thing is, even with the female characters, I mean, let's face it, and I'm pretty sure this is the case. The Princess Leia figures sold like hotcakes, even the boys, because
She was one of the first figures ever released in the early bird kit. It was her, Luke, Chewbacca, and R2-D2. Princess Leia's always been a big part of it.
so it's like it's not as though the market was never there. It's just, I mean, boys will buy them as long as they're good characters.
I had every Princess Leia that came out as a kid. Speeder bike on Endor, bounty hunter, regular in the white suit, gold bikini. I had them all. Princess Leia was part of the crew. You know, Star Wars sold you the trinity of characters, Luke, Han, and Leia. So you wanted to get them in all their costumes, and then you had to get Chewbacca to go with Han Solo, and then you had to get the droids, and then you had to have a bad guy, so you got Darth Vader. But one stormtrooper wasn't enough, so you had to get a whole bunch of them. The characters were compelling to where you just had to get them. Like even nowadays, if I pick up a new scale of Han Solo, well, I gotta get Chewbacca, and I guess I gotta get Luke, and depending on the way they're released, I get them in order. Like I got the Black Series Princess Leia. One, I got it for $7 at Walmart, but two, I like Princess Leia. For a penny, I would not take a Rey Black Series figure. There's just nothing about her that's compelling to me, and it's not because she has a vagina.
What if Rey could hold her breath in space for longer?
We're not even going to go into that.
The thing is, though, Jeff, is that I remember I pissed off Smart mightily when I pointed this out to him. Is that, do you recall Jar Jar Abrams when he gave an interview, and he stated, "Finally, I've made a Star Wars film that my daughter can see."
What an asshole!
Jar Jar Abrams, can you do me a favor and go back to where you're good, making pilots for TV series that never fucking air anywhere?
Mm-hmm.
Just go back to that and disappear.
The thing is, though,
I think we need to outlaw all creators who have female children, because the director of the new Battlefield game said the exact same thing. And it's just like...
Oh God! Do not remind me of
paraphrase
Battlefield
a very
5.
famous wrestler that I'm sure none of you guys know. His name's Brock Lesnar. He says, "I don't give a shit about your kids. I don't give a shit about their kids. Let them live their own lives. Don't ruin our entertainment because of what you think they like or know."
Good old Brock Lobster.
I'm old enough to remember Brock Lesnar.
He's still around. He still wrestles, sadly.
Well, I stopped watching. Actually, when did I stop? Shortly after the WCW ECW invasion.
Oh, 01, okay. I go to WrestleMania every year, so it's kind of like a habit to watch every once in a while with my friends. But
actually, no, I take it back. The last time I watched was the NWO revival.
Okay, 2002 then. Okay.
Because after that, it's like I don't know any of these guys anymore.
It went downhill when The Rock and Stone Cold left. I lost a lot of interest.
I mean, I'm gonna keep on topic, brother.
I mean,
yeah.
Well, the thing is, on top of the thing is, I was born in '86. I'm 31, so I grew up with Jake the Snake Roberts, Hulk Hogan, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Mr. Perfect, Lex Luger, Macho Man Randy Savage, The Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
I grew up with superstars.
Oh, speaking of Hulk Hogan, I have to say the best modern wrestling match of Hulk Hogan was Hulk Hogan versus Gawker. That was one hell of a German suplex. That was one hell of a German suplex that he gave to that company.
Take it on the chin, brother.
But yeah, I mean,
I did not know a spine could bend that way.
That's because they don't have one.
I mean, I actually think that with the WWE now WWE, they've run into the same problem that I think a lot of that Disney and gaming are running into. Without competition, they don't have to give a shit. They're all that you have.
Well, what is it? Doesn't Disney, after the Fox stuff goes through, own like 40% of entertainment in the U.S. or something like that?
It's some crazy amount.
Look, at that point, I'm kind of a guy that's more on the libertarian side of things. At a certain point, you just got to go, okay, Disney, we're going to trust bust you. Just give them no warning, break the company up.
I want that to happen too. I don't get into politics on my show because I don't know where the fans lie, and I really don't want to make it an us versus them type of thing politically. Yeah. But I hope the government shuts down this deal because it doesn't benefit anybody.
Yeah. Apparently, didn't it already go through?
No, it's still got to get approved by them. Yeah. Believe me, I'll cover it on the channel. I think it's the worst thing that could possibly happen.
Fortunately, one thing, if you watch the cyclical rate of economies, unless an outside force props up something that is a monopoly or monopolistic, an outside force other than the economy, monopolies always fall apart. They just break apart because the thing is, last time I checked, the only thing keeping Disney profitable in the black recently was Star Wars, and that's just gone down the shitter.
And it's weird too because I keep talking about the future over on our channel because remember, Disney gets paid, or Lucasfilm gets paid a $220 million licensing fee for Star Wars merchandise from Hasbro. They are able to strong arm higher deals when the merchandise sells X, Y, and Z. Same thing with the movie studios. I don't know if you guys followed this story, but for The Last Jedi, there were all these restrictions that these theaters had to follow to even be able to exhibit The Last Jedi. and The Last Jedi wasn't what it was supposed to be. So I think them being in the black from the Star Wars brand is going to change soon, because these licensors aren't going to pay the fees associated with the former Cadillac of brands, Star Wars.
And if Disney goes into the red for too long, what we'll see happen as a result is the leadership of Disney will get shit canned by the investors, by the stockholders, because Disney is a publicly traded company. It's not private. If that's kind of the fate of monopolies that are publicly traded. The second they start going downhill, the vulture circle, and they don't even wait for it to die. The Disney will be cannibalized. It'll have to cannibalize itself. In fact, it'll have to spin off brands to keep itself going.
Can I pose a question?
Yeah.
If the franchise does indeed signal not necessarily the end of Disney, but that Disney are going to reconsider their options.
Restructure is the term you're looking for.
From a practical standpoint, if they were to drop the franchise like a hot potato, and thereby it would go to, it would be sold on. Is that necessarily the best way forward? Because people felt that way, including myself, unfortunately, back when Lucas sold off the franchise to Disney.
Well, one thing I don't think enough people consider was the gap in Star Wars between 1984 and 1995, I'll say, with the release of the VHS. That was the big push of Star Wars to come back for the special editions. I think absence makes the heart grow fonder, and without a Star Wars every minute, you kind of have some time to breathe and appreciate Star Wars. It would be smart, instead of selling off the brand, just put it, make it dormant for a little bit and bring it back when people want it.
Here's the problem. Disney has a tendency, when they put something in the Disney vault, it stays there for decades.
I'm advocating for a 10-year break of Star Wars.
No, I'm talking a generation minimum, 20 to 30 years. That's Disney's cycle.
Jeff, I wasn't meaning necessarily that films need to be made, but in terms of, say, a return to the EU and the allowance of the old EU, and to carry on from there. Back in the day, you used to have multiple EU threads that often contradicted each other. You had a few EU threads, certainly from the bigger fish, like Timothy Zahn, say, who would acknowledge each other. I don't know if you read the X-Wing series either.
I haven't. I've read some Star Wars books, but as a kid, I was interested in either playing with the toys, watching the movies, or I'd play the games for PC. The only time I was ever into PC gaming was with Star Wars.
So there were some, there's some bias, but some really, really good stories not there that would cater to all different areas of interest. So the X-Wing series obviously were centered on Rogue Squadron and the pilots, Wedge Antilles and their stories, and all sorts of shenanigans and adventures. And it was nice to see acknowledgement from some of the bigger writers who would include some of their works there. So, for instance, when Timothy Zahn then made, was it Spectre, the Past, Vision of the Future? Those two books, he acknowledged some of those aspects from the X-Wing series. And I personally would love to see a return to that kind of
it would be a bit
proliferation of writing and good imagination that's spread around.
It would require a bit of a miracle, but I think what would save Star Wars would be Disney goes into a decent length period of 5 or 10 years of restructuring, where Disney is just trying to figure itself out. During that process, various properties are spun off, divisions are broken off, and then near the end of it, Star Wars is broken off, and it's grabbed by it's spun off, like Lucasfilms gets spun off, but Lucasfilm onto its own, or another company will pick it up, and then they pull a smart move and grab Timothy Zahn as a creative consultant, or kind of who has a lot of power within the company.
Yes.
Somebody who can get in there and clean up the mess, who is both a fan and a creator. That's what Star Wars needs. A fan, a faithful fan who has a creative eye.
Don't you think that's a little too late, though? I feel like they should have done that. We were talking about the X-Wing series a moment ago. If Disney was smart, like, I mean, really, really smart, they would have launched with, like, Rogue One. Because instead of making Episode 7 that nostalgia-fueled film, you would have started out with literally going back to the day before the first Star Wars movie. That could have given people a different take. Instead of having to be stuck with these shitty characters, you could have started out with a bang, boom, Star Wars is back, remember this shit, you're excited.
Yeah.
Then you could have slowly worked into that. And if you would have had somebody like a Timothy Zahn, or I guess like Timothy Zahn, Dave Filoni, and a couple other people that are really into it.
And they would basically do a faithful adaptation of the Thrawn series. They recast a lot of the original.
I don't think it's too late at all.
Yeah.
You might have to wait a while to sort of let the dust settle. But certainly you would have to reboot. You would have to.
Blob, I promise
Yeah,
it
go on.
is too late now.
What makes you say that?
Carrie Fisher is dead.
No.
Okay.
No. Okay. Here's the thing. You do not need the original actors to pull this off. If Timothy, let's say Disney did everything right. They did Rogue One as kind of the reintroduction, get people hyped up, kind of a half popcorn flick, half actually fun, actually good movie. Kind of half action, half good thought-provoking movie that gets people pumped up. And then the next one is it begins the Thrawn series. The thing is, all of the actors that would play the original characters are too old now. So they would have had to have recast. They would have had to have recast them no matter what. But it is doable. What I would recommend is they would. Yeah, go ahead.
They could.
Even Rogue One only had one good character, though. K2SO. Literally the only good character in the entire film, I would say. Most of them were forgettable.
But that's okay, because it would have been the return to Star Wars, and it would have been the return to the universe. That's why I think Rogue One still works, because the backdrop, it expands on what we like. Star Wars used to be my favorite movie. It just expands on that without ruining it.
And it also stitches together a little bit better the original trilogy with the prequel trilogy. It did a little bit of stitching there.
Yeah, and it was great to see Darth Vader back. I think if they were smart, another thing they could do is make Darth Vader the defining character of these these anthology films, and make Darth Vader a thread that ties stuff together in a classier way, because Darth Vader doesn't age. You can always either augment a voice to sound like James Earl Jones or something, but it's something to tie people in, because it worked in Rogue One.
But we know how his story ends, so it kind of undercuts it in a way.
Well, that undercuts the entire existence of Rogue One. Then I mean, just because it also undercuts the entire prequels, because we knew what was going to happen. Like in 1999, this little boy is going to become Darth Vader and die on the Death Star.
And so the thing is, guys, don't focus on the destination. When it comes to a lot of movies, destination's important, but when you do a prequel, the journey is the focus. If they do a good job with the journey, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. Otherwise, the EU never would have had any traction. It was always telling a side story, so it didn't really matter.
So basically, what Sewell's saying is, don't stop believing.
I would hardly agree to that. I would say this though, Jeff. I don't think Darth Vader would necessarily be the best character to focus on. Part of why he has such a presence is that you don't have so much screen time with him, and that's what makes him so menacing. Is that there is that air of mystery, particularly with the.
Well, I don't mean he needs to be like the main character of these films, but he could be,
He's a looming presence. He's a looming presence.
Yeah, the word is out about Darth Vader in the galaxy. Oh, the Emperor's new right-hand man, or this or that. Yeah. Like, he can be mentioned, and how he showed up in Rogue One was fine. I actually think it would have been better if he only showed up in the one part. I don't necessarily like the end where he's doing all that lightsaber stuff, because then when he gets on the ship, the Tantive 4 in the first movie, why is the lightsaber holstered? Why, it worked better when he was just intimidating and the other people did his fighting, but if he was willing to do that just seconds earlier, like, why not continue that? It worked. I don't know. That's the kind of stuff that builds contradictory.
I would argue that what happened is they expanded this in the novelization and some of the comics around Rogue One. Vader, because of the Death Star plans being so important, obviously he would be personally deployed with the 501st to get them back. And also, there is a jump in time, not much of a jump, but there is a jump of time in between Rogue One and the beginning of A New Hope. I wouldn't say it's days, but it could be several hours. Because we do not, it could easily be several hours of them following the ship.
Well, there is a chase. I mean, what was it? The Devastator that followed them.
Yeah, Vader's ship, the Devastator.
Yeah.
So he could have. So it's not like it was like 30 seconds and he's capturing the princess. No, it's likely a couple of hours.
I have another suggestion, Jeff. Don't you think that power should be returned to the fans, i.e., those horrific dictatorial rules about fan films only being 10 minutes each or something like that, and not allowed to have any.
That's Star Trek.
Did Star Wars not add something similar recently with Disney?
Not to my knowledge.
Just give you guys a heads up, we're getting near the front.
I might be confusing the two. Jeff, do you know any more about that?
I don't. I have a lot of people send me fan films to watch and make a video on this fan film and stuff like that, and I'd love to. The only one I've ever really watched was something about Boba Fett, and he kills some commander in the snow or something like that. I don't really know the rules, but I know that Lucas used to have a thing that as long as it didn't make a profit, he wouldn't stop the movie. I'm pretty sure that's like what it was. So if you funneled your own money into it to make it, but you weren't making a profit, I think it was okay. Like I don't know how that. Why and people just did it out of love. I get that. I just don't know how it worked.
You should check out the Han Solo one. It's a hell of a lot better than the movie.
Yeah. Somebody's telling me that a bunch.
Well, that's a low bar, though.
True. And how the fuck? It was a lawless time. The galaxy had never been so well policed.
The only areas that remained lawless was Hutt space, Wild space, the Outer Rim, parts of the Mid Rim, and Unknown space. Those are
the Outer Rim territories had a regional moth. Even Tatooine had a battalion.
Got it. Yeah, but I think the Moths were more corrupt in the Outer Rim. They let the Hutts get away with more.
Maybe, but it was still under Imperial control.
See, the only places that would have been Wild space, where the Imperials always had trouble there, and Unknown region, which they were sending Thrawn out to explore.
Why couldn't they cover this in a movie instead of Space Horses and Canto Bight?
Because capitalism is evil.
Well, no, because J.J. Abrams needed a movie to take his daughter to.
I think it's possibly because they now think every Star Wars story has to be between the rebels and the Empire.
And I'm okay with having good and evil fighting, but the Empire lost in Return of the Jedi.
Why are they not?
Yeah, they never cover that in the movie. They never cover the fact... Like, there are so many problems with Episode 7 that people are like, well, 7's not as bad as 8. Maybe. I don't know. But 7 causes so many problems because, mystery box. Like, J.J. Abrams, fuck him and his mystery boxes. It ruins movies, especially Star Wars, because Star Wars was never about mystery and allure. It was about good versus evil, a movie that spoke to people on human level, like a deep level, and a spectacle.
It was the hero's journey.
Yes, and all those things were great, but we went on the hero's journey with Luke Skywalker, the greatest hero of Star Wars. Maybe he wasn't the most powerful.
Heroes fall with the prequel.
Yes, and we had that, and then in the new ones, what were you going to do? Even if you do have another hero's journey, at least build the world up enough.
There is a variant of the hero story they could have pulled off with Rey, the overeager hero. Somebody who wants glory, wants adventure, but when they seek it out, they cause more harm. Though they win, it's at a cost. Basically, the first movie you have Rey overconfident, not seeing the damage she does to the very end of the movie. She goes to seek Luke to try and figure out what to do next. And then the next movie you have her unsure of herself. Have her actually have a character arc. Maybe even, I don't know, have her actually fall to the dark side.
Seawall, she has a character. It's called Vagina.
Doesn't need no master.
Just to give you guys a heads up, we're at an hour mark, and I have to be up in
okay.
so many hours.
So, here's the thing. I think Razor Fist prophesized it best. You will beg for George Lucas before the end.
No.
I've had him on my show before. He's awesome.
I know.
Yeah.
That's actually how I got introduced to you by the Razor Fist Mauler stream you did.
Oh, that created a lot of controversy. I feel bad for my friend Retroblast, and they gave him he got the short end of the stick, and he didn't even say or do anything that could be construed as offensive. But
Oh no, I'm sitting there. I loved it. That was
What on earth could he possibly have done?
well, he didn't do anything. Mahler made a joke about your Rose Tico figures being found in the ethnic food aisle. And I thought it was funny too. It's a joke, but people are accusing him as a racist, and all these people tried to come after me on Twitter. But I'm like, we're not racist. We don't say anything racist about her. Like, take 2 minutes to watch the first 2 minutes of any video.
It's a bit of plastic. Get over it.
Yeah, people over here are just full of themselves.
If you really want to piss them off, you can always tell them, hey, if you don't like the joke, why don't you go into these showers and take a deep breath?
Oh my God, that's cold. That's cold.
It's a cold shower.
No, but the Mahler Razor Fist thing with Retro Voice, I think was one of the best things I've ever done in terms of like discussion on Star Wars. The people were just really into it. We had almost 5,000 people watching. For the High Council that I do every week, we maybe get 2,500, if that. But Mahler and Razor Fist, man, they just brought in, and Retroblasting, they just brought this audience, and we just had this great discussion. I'd love to have them on again. I just think Retroblasting got burned and doesn't want to go through that.
Yeah, ironically enough, we had for our Star Wars holiday special. I think that was the best we ever did because despite it being 40 years later, Star Wars is just a cultural monument to so many.
Mm-hmm.
And we could still talk about it with passion. We could have discussed it to death, but we still care.
Well, I think that's why my channel works, because there are a lot of people that get in on the Star Wars thing that clearly aren't fans. They're just doing it for views and clicks, and that's fine.
Hey, bro. Sorry about that.
But I'm just saying, but then there are people like me and the guys on my show that grew up Star Wars fans, and clearly you guys, even if you're not, some of you like Star Trek more, that's fine, but you clearly get it. You've been there a long enough time to understand how it works, why this new stuff doesn't work. And I think that's why this discussion will always be relevant. Like you said, it's a cultural monument for so many people. I mean, go to, like, when Episode 7 came out, because we hadn't seen it yet, we couldn't judge it, or no, but the lines, the crazy, like, people from every walks of life, young, old, and everyone in between, came there to just experience Star Wars together. When I go to Celebration next year, I know I'm going to be bombarded with people from every walks of life. It just, Star Wars works for everybody, and to try to change it doesn't work for anyone. I mean,
hell,
look
Star
what they're
Wars
doing.
is such a huge cultural icon. There is the 501st charity organization. The guys that are basically Uber cosplayers that raise money for kids.
Yep.
I mean, the thing is, again, I talked to the people in the Batcave about this before. When after the Star Trek 2009 film, which was done by J.J. Abrams, I was like, okay, this is a Star Trek movie. This is a straight-up Star Wars movie. Okay. But the thing is, then the second one happened, I'm like, so I'm like, okay, I have a whole lot of reservations going in, because I don't think he's going to treat these franchises with respect. Because when he originally did the Star Trek movie, he said he watched a lot of Star Trek, he was a big fan, and then, immediately after people started criticizing it, he said, well, I never really understood Star Trek, it was too cerebral. I'm like, so you lied to everybody. I don't trust you. And then The Force Awakens happened. I'm like, called it.
Yep.
I got a bad feeling about that movie the minute I saw that teaser trailer with John Boyega popping up in the stand. Not because he was a black stormtrooper, but because of the way the people in the media like gushed over it. And I'm like, this is what Star Wars is now. This is where we are as a culture. Remember when we saw the poster of little Anakin with Darth Vader as the silhouette? That's the first image you see. That's awesome. That is like, holy shit, this is the fall of Darth Vader. Oh no, this is like progression the movie. Like, I don't care.
Yeah, that was,
some dude sticks his head up in a desert looking sweaty and confused. Yeah, that is a great way to bring me into the movie, Disney. Great job.
And Star Wars characters have always like been a bigger thing, kind of like how DC characters are meant to represent something, and Marvel characters are human. They've always been a little more than just like a regular person, yet we can relate to them. Like Princess Leia is a woman, but she represents certain things and works. Finn is a joke, and in many ways he's a stereotype of black guys in America, and I don't think they realize that. because they literally make him chase after the white woman and the Asian woman, and that's a stereotype in America. We all know about it. It's just a joke. And them trying to do all this shit, they've basically become what they hate by mistake. By trying to be so progressive, they've gone and regressed in many ways.
Also, the weird thing is, I watched episode 8. Finn wasn't really chasing Rose. Rose was chasing him. It was weird. And one of the problems is also Disney really screwed up that creating that relationship, because one, it has no chemistry, and two, that pissed off Chinese audiences.
Yeah, Chinese audiences don't like Star Wars, and they don't. I think it's called like Baizu Entertainment or something like that.
No. I'm going for this progressivism stuff. The Chinese hate it.
But it's called like Baizu. It means like white left. That's what I think it translates to. They don't like that stuff, and that's the name for it. Yeah. It's funny. A couple years ago, they're just desperate to get into the Chinese market. Hey, there's extra scenes for Iron Man, Transformers 4. They're drinking this water out of a box or this milk out of a box or whatever it is. Like all this Chinese stuff to try to sell to the Chinese market. And then they try it with Star Wars, but they don't go the right direction, and then they're falling on their face. I mean, The Last Jedi left China in, 8 days? Some record number. People just didn't give a shit about Star Wars.
Well, what is it? I think it was a domestic rom-com beat Star Wars.
Yeah, it was a part 3 of something.
Jeff Soilo did really, really well in China. I think they had 6 viewers.
No, 5.
We get more viewers than Soilo in China.
Okay, so, all right, I should just looked it up. Apparently, Solo opened in 3rd place behind Holdovers, How Long Will I Love You, and Avengers of Infinity War. It only pulled $9.62 million in China.
Jeez.
Yeah. Also, Blip, you're off by those numbers. There were only 5 people in the audience. One of them died halfway through the movie. He had dementia. He didn't know where he was. So we don't count him.
As Boss Nass would say.
But yes, I think we need to start wrapping this up, guys. Sorry, but I work early.
All right, so yeah, in general, yeah, I am convinced episode 9 is going to flop.
And if it does, it'll be a breath of fresh air.
Well, they won't be able to spin it because, remember, they want to say it's a bunch of racist white guys on the internet that hate Star Wars. But if that's the case, how come all the minorities and women that they try to champion for don't go see these movies either? Because they're not fans.
Well, also, 2 flops in a row? That does not look good on a stockholders report.
Only a Sith Lord deals in logic.
Then call me a fucking gray Jedi.
I'll accept the title of Sith because I believe in the Sith code.
It's going to be an interesting couple of months. Well, actually, it's going to be an interesting, 18 months, so almost over a year. All I tell people on my channel is to make sure you guys don't forget about this stuff and just become complacent. Make sure if you truly want to change for Star Wars, you just keep having these discussions and let more people know about it. Clearly, Disney knows. You guys heard the news that came out today, right?
Did they shit can a trilogy?
No, there was a big meeting between Kathleen Kennedy, Bob Iger, everyone at Lucasfilm, Marvel, and Pixar. They had to listen in. They're trying to look for a replacement for Kathleen Kennedy. She was almost fired. But
the Senate has been dissolved.
Yeah. Fear of this battle station. That was the big news story today. I went on a live stream just randomly to cover it. It's the big news topic. You guys make sure you're...
So how long do you think she is for this world?
I think Kathleen Kennedy's out in September. There was an old rumor about that, because here's what I said on the stream this morning, or this afternoon. You don't want her to get fired during Celebration, because that'll be the whole talk of Celebration. They want to probably release a trailer for Episode 9. They want to talk about the Star Wars theme parks in California and Florida. There are other things they want to be able to control the narrative. You covering. If they fire Kathleen Kennedy, if Kathleen Kennedy's the story, that's going to ruin everything they've planned. So either she goes away quietly by September, or she just doesn't go away until after episode 9. It's going to be...
Or ironically, by publicly announcing that they're firing Kathleen Kennedy, actually it would probably generate more positive feedback than anything else they could do.
I will sit on a live stream and just clap my hands for a while because it needs to be done. Nobody else, like if any other business, if like Coca-Cola, I wasn't even alive for New Coke, but New Coke came out in 85. People hated that shit. By the end of the summer, Coca-Cola Classic was back. That was the worst business decision ever in terms of soft.
Actually, there is a conspiracy theory that it was entirely because initially New Coke was well received, then it took a nosedive. It had novelty, then it fell apart. It's actually a conspiracy that it was entirely planned that they would go to Classic Coke. They were ready for it. They were planning for people to want the old stuff back.
Well, what are they going to do with Star Wars what if there was a conspiracy for Star Wars? What are we going to want back? I just think people either wanted to go away or her to go away quickly.
The thing is, I'll take the prequels back.
They basically declare everything not canon except for probably Rogue One. Then what they do is they announce that Timothy Zahn will be the creative lead behind a new Star Wars series that starts.
Do you think enough? What about brand confusion? Do you think enough people know who Timothy Zahn is or care? They're just gonna. That's why I think Solo was what it was, because they like to tell people, "Oh, these angry white guys were why the Last Jedi." Those are the only people that dislike it. It made all this money, but it made significantly less, like $700 million less. And then Solo was a flop. And as I said, everybody's not liking this. So if the general consensus is only so much about Star Wars, are they going to be able to follow the fact that, hey, we canceled this line, we're going with this line? Don't you think that would be too confusing for your average moviegoer?
Well,
yes, Jeff. What? Why has Solo done so poorly? Who and what audience have the sequels been aimed at?
I guess us, the fans that know. But
exactly.
And Timothy Zahn is pretty much.
He's enshrined.
Exactly.
Yeah. And also, it's not that hard for Disney to do a press tour with him, and they start introducing people to the books. It's not that hard to pull off. They talk about, a release of an audio version. They bring him on a press tour where he talks about, the history of the Star Wars Expanded Universe. It's not that hard to put people on a press tour and get it out there through the mainstream.
Actually, it would be a good test bed just to see if people would be interested. Considering the fact that Disney has access to all these animation resources, do a CG animated version of the books.
I'm all for that because...
You mean they pull a DC animated movies?
Yeah, but like big budget. We're talking...
Yeah.
What like a Pixar style. Do a Pixar thing. Well, not
like
Pixar.
Clone Wars?
I would want like a more realistic, gritty CGI cartoon, not... big eyes and crazy expressions. Like, make them look just like Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher.
Well, basically, think Clone Wars with a higher budget.
Okay, that show definitely got better looking towards the end.
Yeah.
I'd say Clone Wars with a higher budget.
Well, at that point, it's Rebels. It's that point, it's Rebels with a higher budget.
No, Rebels is highly stylized.
True.
Yeah, based off the Ralph McQuarrie stuff.
Exactly.
But use that as a base and tell the tale of Grand Admiral Thrawn and the New Republic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all for it, guys. I mean, I'm looking at a copy of The Last Command right here on my shelf. I'm all for changing that stuff up. I'm not trying to even play devil's advocate. I'm just wondering, would people know? I would like it in a perfect world. If we had to have what we have now, they would come out with 9 and be like, all right, we're going in a new direction, and the new direction's more standalone movies. We're not focused on trilogies. It's like Rogue Squadron, the movie, this, that, and they don't worry about this crap that they shoved into the movies, and they treat the fans with respect.
Or something that if Disney wants to play it even safer, they spin off. The brand is still owned by Disney, but they put it under a different company name, basically not a true shell company, basically like a subsidiary, or they spin off Lucasfilm to be more independent. And then Lucasfilms does something like a Kickstarter saying, hey, we want to make this movie. We want to make this into an animated movie, and they point to one of the books that is popular. And test it that way. Crowdfund it. Crowdfund the first one. See what the options are.
I mean, if they crowdfunded, like, did you guys follow the Hasbro HasLab Jabba Sail Barge toy line?
No,
I did not.
Have you at least heard of it?
I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, so Hasbro put out a thing called HasLab. It's basically Kickstarter for a toy to put out a feeler for high-end collectibles, and they did Jabba the Hutt sail barge, and like I don't know, whatever the scale would be for the ship.
Oh, was that for 3 3 3/4 inch figures?
Yeah, and that was $500 a pop, and people bought into that. But there was also a lot of controversy surrounding it. Do you think they would want to open themselves up to something so embarrassing, or do you think they could do like a fan poll and really regulate it to be like you can only vote once per IP address or whatever like that?
Okay, here's the problem. 4chan is a hell of a lot smarter than these tech guys, guaranteed. They weaponized autism, and there is no way to stop it. It is the nuclear bomb of the internet.
But aren't those people the ones that you would want? Because wouldn't they gravitate towards?
No. 4chan doesn't care. Doesn't really have cares. They are the true chaotic neutral. They just do chaos. It's what they do. They will always choose the stupidest option, guaranteed.
Basically, instead of the Zahn trilogy, they're going to get the one where they fund the Secret of the Force as this giant macroorganism outside the galaxy.
Or they'll fund one of the ones where there's basically a furry relationship in it.
How about the Courtship of Princess Leia? I'll buy that movie.
Yeah.
3-way relationship with Wicket? No!
Yeah, or you don't even give them the option. You give them 3 choices that everyone would want to see, and it's 1, 2, or 3. No other.
Actually, my options for that would probably be obviously the start of the Thrawn trilogy, the start of the Jedi Academy trilogy, or Truce at Bakura.
Also, another one we're not considering. What about the building up of the New Republic in the early Jedi Order?
Like I said, Truce at Bakura.
That's what I just pointed out.
Sorry, yeah, I'm not. But also cover stuff that's happening with the New Republic as well as the Imperial Remnant. Actually, have all of those stories tied together.
Again, but you're covering quite a large time period, all the way up until the Zambong era.
Yeah.
Whatever they do, they better just space it out properly and not try to release a movie every 6 months and not be, confusing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. They release a movie every 2 to 3 years, I'd say, is probably the best option.
Well, in order to get a decent...
You want to wrap things up?
Yeah, because Seawall's got to work and such. So, on that note, final thoughts, gentlemen. Beggar.
Let's just hope this doesn't go to 40K. That's all I'm saying.
40K would be a reprieve.
Bigfoot.
I honestly don't care about anything that comes out of Western media right now. Literally, almost everything I'm anticipating is coming out of Japan. So,
like what?
I like a lot of. I have a handful of games that is coming out. I think the new Evangelion movie might be coming out next year. They're starting the animation process in 5 days.
Okay.
So that should be out next year, hopefully. Could be another year after that, so it could be coming out 2020 or 2019. But who knows? Anno could have another mental breakdown and go to rewrites. So who knows what's going with that. And there's always... And then there's JoJo's Part 5 coming out in October, so that's what I'm excited for. Oh, stop laughing, Spark.
It's not my fault. It's not my fault they look like cross-dressing prostitutes.
They've always looked like that. All of the designs have always been
not
tracing
that bad.
Guys, we're getting stuck in the weeds.
Yeah. Blah.
Just cut it out in post, jeez.
Don't be too proud of this technological terror you've constructed, Disney. The ability to destroy a franchise is insignificant next to the power of the fans.
Oh, that's good. Seawall, final thoughts.
I'm tired. I'm watching the world burn. I don't know if I should keep awake or go get some sleep.
Get some marshmallows.
Got it.
Gimpy, any final thoughts to type out? And while he's doing that, Jeff, closing thoughts.
best Star Wars toy topic discussion I've ever had. So, all joking aside, though, thanks for having me on. I had a really great time. I didn't know what to expect, but this was like a more intellectual version of World Class Bullshitter. So I had a lot of fun tonight. And,
you expected nothing and you got even less.
But if you guys ever want to come on an episode of our show and promote this one, reach a really big audience, you're more than welcome to. I feel like you guys have a lot of great talking points that a lot of people would really get behind, and in a well thought out manner. So, thank you again, and it's been an honor.
Glad to have you aboard. Yeah. And closing thoughts on my end. Kathleen Kennedy's on her way out the door. About fucking time. Don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Bottle of scotch ready. We all better celebrate when that day comes.
Cheers. All right, and with that, gentlemen, this has been the Deplorable Batcave. Later.